Welcome to Taste China Learn English. For today's deep dive, I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine a spa, but a spa for your stomach.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's quite a mental image. A spa for your stomach.
Right. I mean,
Ah,
what even comes to mind when you hear that? Because usually, if you walked into like a Michelin-starred kitchen in New York or London, and you looked the executive chef dead in the eye and called their signature dish bland, you would probably get thrown out the back door.
Oh, absolutely. You'd be chased out. In Western culinary traditions, calling a dish bland is pretty much the ultimate insult.
Yeah, it implies a lack of skill, right? Or, a fear of seasoning. Just plain laziness in the kitchen.
Exactly. But looking at the massive stack of culinary anthropology papers, food science journals, and historical texts we're diving into today, blandness is actually this highly engineered secret weapon.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is. It's the foundational architecture behind one of the most widely consumed, deeply revered dishes on planet Earth.
And that completely flips our standard understanding of flavor totally on its head. Today, we are exploring a dish known in China as zhu.
Right, which most English speakers would know as kanji.
Exactly. And the sources we're exploring today really unpack the magic of this dish. By stripping away all the aggressive spices, the complex fats, and that typical sensory overload, Congee achieves something incredibly rare.
It does. It provides this pure, unadulterated comfort. It's essentially the ultimate comfort food for millions of people because it works with human biology rather than against it.
So, our mission on this deep dive is to really deconstruct that comfort. We're going to explore the culinary alchemy behind how just rice and water transform into this bioavailable superfood.
We'll also look at how chefs use it as a cultural blank canvas and why ancient medical texts revere it as a deeply healing food.
Right. But before we can understand all that cultural weight, we really have to start with the physics of the bowl. We need to understand the physical transformation of the ingredients.
Yeah, because when you strip away all the garnishes and just look at the baseline recipe, congee is essentially just rice cooked in a massive volume of water for a really long time.
But the outcome is not just wet rice. Like if you just pour water on rice, you get soggy grains. The food science journals actually describe the final texture of congee as a viscous suspension or a creamy matrix.
A creamy matrix. I love that term.
Right, which is crazy considering there's absolutely zero dairy involved in the process. It's comparable to Western oatmeal porridge, just to give you a familiar reference point. But in congee, rice is the undisputed star of the show.
Yeah, and the mechanism creating that dairy-free creaminess is a process called starch gelatinization.
Starch gelatinization. Okay, break that down for us.
So you aren't just boiling the rice to make it fluffy. You are applying sustained thermal energy, basically, a lot of heat and hydration, until the cellular structure of the rice grain undergoes a complete physical surrender.
A physical surrender. That sounds intense for a grain of rice.
I mean, it kind of is. Inside a grain of rice, you have these two main types of starch molecules. They're called amylose and amylopectin,
Okay.
and they are packed tightly together in these microscopic granules.
So as the water heats up, those tightly packed granules start absorbing the liquid, right? Like tiny little sponges.
Exactly like sponges. They absorb the water and they begin to swell up. And eventually, the temperature reaches this critical threshold, usually around 60 to 70 degrees Celsius, depending on the specific grain.
And then what happens?
Those swollen granules literally burst open. And when they rupture, the long chain amylose molecules leach out into the surrounding water in the pot.
Oh, wow. So they just spill out everywhere.
Right, and they tangle together, forming this vast, microscopic, three-dimensional network that physically traps water molecules inside of it.
So that physical entanglement is what changes the liquid from just a thin, watery broth into that signature thick, smooth consistency.
You hit the nail on the head. It's structural creaminess. And it's achieved entirely through time, temperature, and molecular networking.
It stops being separate components you know? It's no longer just rice floating in water. It becomes this unified entity.
Which brings us directly back to that concept we mentioned earlier, blandness.
Ah, right. The secret weapon.
Because this unified, creamy matrix is fundamentally neutral in flavor. In broader traditional Chinese culinary philosophy, this specific type of blandness, this neutrality, it isn't a negative void.
Like it's not a mistake.
Exactly. It is a massive positive. It is described as an intentional absence of aggression.
I often struggle with that word bland because in the West, we immediately associate it with boring.
Oh, for sure. Cardboard.
Now,
Tasteless.
right. But looking at these historical and culinary texts, the distinction becomes really clear. They aren't talking about a meal that someone just forgot to season.
No, not at all.
They are talking about a specific architectural baseline. It is a flavor profile that doesn't demand anything from your palate or your digestive tract.
Oh. And that digestive part is key. Think about the mechanics of human digestion for a second. When you consume a heavy, rich comfort food, let's say uh, a greasy slice of pizza or a big bowl of heavy macaroni and cheese.
Sounds delicious, but yeah, it sits heavy.
Right, because your body has to secrete significant amounts of bile to emulsify all those fats. And your gastrointestinal tract has to work incredibly hard to break down the complex proteins.
It takes a toll. It's metabolically expensive.
Exactly. But a perfectly prepared bowl of congee is the exact opposite of that. Because the starches have already undergone complete gelatinization in the pot, the heavy lifting of digestion has actually been done externally.
That is so cool. It is essentially pre-digested through thermal physics.
Yes.
Your body doesn't have to conquer the food.
Yeah.
It just absorbs the nourishment.
Which is exactly why this is the foundational meal for any human whose biological systems are compromised. I mean, it is the first solid food given to infants whose digestive enzymes are still developing.
Makes sense.
It is the staple for the elderly whose metabolic efficiency has maybe slowed down a bit. And it is the universal prescription for anyone feeling under the weather.
See, that makes perfect biological sense.
Yeah.
But it kind of leads to a thematic transition for us. Because if the baseline is so fundamentally mild and so heavily focused on easy digestion, we run into a bit of a culinary paradox.
How so?
Well, people don't just eat congee when they're shivering with a fever or nursing a stomach bug. They actively seek it out. They crave it for breakfast on a random Tuesday, or they'll order it at high-end restaurants.
That's very true.
So if the dish is literally engineered to be unaggressive and mild, how does it become a crave-worthy dish?
Well, this is where we shift from food science to flavor architecture. The intentional blandness serves as the ultimate blank canvas.
The blank canvas.
Right. When your base is incredibly mild and structurally smooth, it creates an environment where any ingredient you introduce is just amplified. It frames other flavors perfectly.
So it allows them to take center stage without competing against the baseline.
Exactly. You get to highlight whatever you add to it.
And the culinary texts highlight two divergent paths that chefs usually take with this blank canvas: the savory route and the sweet route.
Yes, let's start with savory because that's where some absolute flavor alchemy happens. A classic, highly revered example is Pidan Shiro Zhu.
Which translates to century egg and lean pork congee.
That's the one. It is an absolute masterclass in flavor balancing. But to really understand why it works so well, we have to look at the intensity of the century egg itself.
Okay, for anyone who hasn't experienced a century egg, the visual alone is striking.
It really is.
It is a preserved duck, chicken, or quail egg, but it has undergone this radical transformation. The white of the egg turns into this dark brown, translucent, almost amber-like jelly.
Yeah, it looks like a gemstone almost.
And the yolk becomes incredibly creamy, dark green or gray, and it carries this intensely rich, earthy, and highly sulfurous flavor.
That whole transformation is the result of alkaline fermentation. The traditional method involves coating the egg in a mixture of clay, wood ash, quicklime, and salt.
That doesn't sound like typical cooking.
It's not. Over several weeks or even months, the alkaline compounds from the quicklime and the ash migrate through the porous eggshell. This drastically raises the internal pH of the egg.
And that denatures the proteins without even using heat, right?
Exactly. The proteins break down into simpler flavor compounds, which creates that intense umami and those signature ammonia-like notes.
So you were taking this fiercely intense, highly polarizing ingredient, an egg that has been chemically altered to pack the maximum possible punch of umami and sulfur, and you were pairing it with thin, salty strips of lean cork.
Right. And if you ate those two things just on their own, it might be totally overwhelming.
Yeah, way too intense. But when you drop that payload into the mild, warm, creamy matrix of the congee,
Yeah.
the thermodynamics of the hot porridge gently melt the creamy yolk right into the surrounding rice.
Oh, it's beautiful. The congee absorbs the sharp saltiness of the cork and the deep umami of the egg, and it distributes them evenly throughout the whole bowl.
So the blandness tempers the aggressive intensity of the alkaline fermentation.
And at the same time, the egg elevates the gentle neutrality of the rice. They operate in this perfect symbiotic relationship.
Now, the texts also explore the completely opposite end of the spectrum, the sweet route,
Yes. A really prominent example of that is lava congee.
right, which is traditionally eaten during the Lava Festival leading up to the Lunar New Year. You take that exact same mild gelatinized rice base, but instead of pork and fermented eggs, you construct the canvas with red beans, sweet dates, lotus seeds, and peanuts.
And it transforms into this subtly sweet, deeply comforting, almost dessert-like porridge.
The versatility is just staggering. I mean, it functions as a savory breakfast, medicinal remedy, or a festive dessert simply by swapping the cast of characters orbiting the main grain.
It really is the ultimate culinary chameleon.
But I actually want to push back on the mechanics of eating this dish for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Let's look at the physical sensation. If the congee itself is so soft, creamy, and wet, and the ingredients you are folding into it, like a creamy century egg or soft boiled red beans, are also fundamentally soft, doesn't eating a whole bowl of it get a bit texturally monotonous for the palate?
You mean like you'd get bored eating it?
Yeah, we hit a physiological wall. The brain experiences sensory-specific satiety. If you are eating a bowl of uniform, warm mush, palate fatigue sets in pretty rapidly.
That's a very fair point.
The brain gets bored of the texture, regardless of how good it tastes, and sends signals to stop eating. So where is the sensory friction?
That is a crucial observation, and it points directly to a fundamental rule of culinary science that the creators of congee understood intuitively: the absolute necessity of contrast.
Contrast.
Yes, you cannot have a successful soft dish without a crunchy counterpoint. To prevent that palate fatigue and keep the neurological reward systems firing, the tradition developed an entire ecosystem of side dishes.
Oh, I see. So if congee is the bass line, steady, warm, and constant, these side dishes are the snare drum and the hi-hat.
I love that analogy. Yes. They provide the necessary sensory snap to keep your brain actively engaged with the meal. And the undisputed king of that side dish ecosystem is youtiao.
Utiao, the deep-fried dough stick.
It is a masterpiece of textural engineering. These are long, golden, heavily aerated strips of wheat dough. They're quickly fried in hot oil until they achieve a shattered, crispy exterior while remaining really porous on the inside.
Imagine the sensory collision happening at the table. You have a steaming hot bowl of incredibly smooth, mild, water-based rice porridge.
Yeah.
And next to it, you have a room temperature, intensely crunchy, fat-based, savory fried dough stick.
Right. And when you break off a piece of that youtiao and dip it into the hot, smooth congee, it acts like a highly calibrated sponge.
It's a match made in heaven.
It really is. The structural integrity of the crispy exterior holds its crunch just long enough to survive the dip, while the airy, porous interior rapidly soaks up the warm, gelatinized rice soup.
So when you take a bite, you are experiencing simultaneous temperature contrast, the hot porridge against the cooling dough.
Plus, you're getting extreme texture contrast, the smooth creaminess against the sharp shatter of the fried shell.
And flavor contrast too, right? The mild, neutral rice acting as a palate cleanser for the rich, salty oil of the dough.
Exactly. It is practically engineered to hack your sensory pathways. But the side dishes don't stop at fried dough either.
Right. The culinary anthropology sources detail vast arrays of fermented and preserved accompaniments. You have savory sides like pickled mustard greens,
Oh, those are great. They introduce a sharp, acidic, bright crunch that slices right through the thick viscosity of the rice.
or salted duck eggs, where the yolks have been cured until they become firm, granular, and intensely oily.
So every single spoonful becomes a customized, interactive experience. You take a spoonful of mild, warm congee, then a small nibble of a highly acidic, crunchy pickle.
The sharp pickle wakes up the palate, and the subsequent bite of mild congee instantly resets it.
Exactly. You are constantly toggling between extreme intensity and complete neutrality. It keeps the brain entirely focused on the act of eating.
Okay, so we have established how it dominates the palate through contrast. But moving from the palate to the body, we need to look deeper into the physiological impact.
Right, the medicinal side of things.
Yeah. We mentioned earlier that congee bypasses the biological bottleneck of digestion, making it the universal go-to remedy when someone have a cold. But the medical and historical texts detail a much more profound mechanism at work when dealing with illness.
They do. When the human immune system detects a pathogen like a cold or a flu virus, it immediately initiates a massive reallocation of resources.
It essentially shuts down the non-essential.
Exactly. It downregulates functions like complex digestion to route all that energy toward creating antibodies and raising body temperature to burn off the infection.
And simultaneously, that fever response drastically increases the body's demand for hydration. Cellular fluids are just burned through at an accelerated rate.
But the problem is, forcing down large volumes of cold water can shock a sensitive gastrointestinal tract, and water alone provides zero caloric energy to fuel the immune response.
So you have a sick body that desperately needs both fluid and fuel, but absolutely refuses to expend energy to digest complex food.
And congee solves this biological catch-22 perfectly because
Yeah.
it is cooked with such a massive ratio of water to rice. I mean, sometimes up to 10 parts water to 1 part rice.
Wow, 10 to 1.
Yeah. And that gelatinized starch matrix we talked about, it suspends all that water. So when consumed, it delivers deeply necessary, life-sustaining hydration at a cellular level, packaged seamlessly alongside pre-digested, immediately bioavailable carbohydrates.
It fuels the immune system while hydrating the cells, demanding zero metabolic effort in return.
Exactly. And the physical warmth of the congee is a critical functional component too. The historical Chinese medical texts frame this not just in terms of calories and hydration, but through the broader cultural concept of qi.
Qi, which is often translated as life force or energy,
Yeah.
right?
Right. When illness sets in, traditional texts describe the body's energy as depleted, stagnant, or cold. So the introduction of a deeply warm, physically soothing substance isn't merely about feeling cozy.
It's functional.
Yes, it is a functional application of heat. Consuming hot congee physically warms the gastrointestinal tract from the inside out. This promotes vasodilation, which is the widening of blood vessels, and that increases blood flow to the core.
So, in the language of traditional medicine, you're introducing warm, nourishing qi to drive out the cold, stagnant energy of the pathogen to restore balance.
Exactly. It is a deeply holistic approach to healing that recognizes the energetic state the food forces your body to enter. You aren't just giving the body building blocks, you are giving it this specific thermodynamic environment it needs to rebuild.
Which really highlights a profound duality woven throughout all the sources we've examined today. On one hand, congee is the ultimate food of survival, thrift, and profound humility.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if a family only has a small handful of leftover rice from the previous night, Adding a large volume of water and boiling it down extends that meager calorie count into a meal that can physically fill the stomachs of several people.
It is deeply economical. You can make a restorative meal with just rice, water, a pinch of salt, and perhaps a few slivers of julienne ginger to settle the stomach for a sick day. It requires almost no financial resources to create baseline comfort.
Yet it completely escapes being pigeonholed as strictly a poor man's food.
Right.
Because of its foundational perfection, it scales infinitely upward. At high-end banquets, weddings, or celebratory feasts, you will find congee elevated to the absolute height of culinary luxury.
Oh, yeah. Chefs will use rich, complex stocks instead of water and fold in incredible expensive ingredients like fancy seafood, fresh abalone, live lobster, or prime crab meat.
But the dish doesn't change its core identity. It simply adapts its blank canvas to the socioeconomic moment. It is exactly as comfortable wearing a tuxedo at a wedding as it is wrapped in a blanket on a sick day.
That is such a great way to put it. That is the ultimate marker of a culturally transcendent dish. It is reliably present during the highest highs of festive holidays and the lowest lows of physical sickness. It serves as a constant stabilizing force across generations,
It really does.
pulling all of these threads together.
Yeah.
The physics of starch gelatinization, the architectural brilliance of the blank canvas, the sensory hack of the crunchy side dishes, and the profound biological efficiency during illness. We are really looking at a masterclass in functional design.
We are. It teaches a really powerful lesson. The most profound nourishment doesn't always come from explosive, aggressive flavors or heavy, overwhelming richness.
Right.
Sometimes the pinnacle of culinary achievement is found in a gentle, mild foundation that demands absolutely nothing from you, but flawlessly adapts to provide exactly what you need in that precise moment.
And that leads to a rather fascinating realization. Right now, billions of dollars are being poured into food science startups in Silicon Valley and beyond. They are trying to engineer the ultimate bioavailable, easily digestible superfood matrix for optimal human performance and recovery.
Using bioreactors and synthetic biology to create the perfect fuel, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yet when we look at the mechanics of Congee, we see that thousands of years ago, human intuition already solved that exact problem.
It's amazing.
Using nothing more than water, a basic grain, and the strategic application of time and temperature, our ancestors engineered a completely optimized delivery system for hydration and energy.
It makes you wonder how many other modern biological hurdles have already been cleared by ancient culinary traditions, just waiting for us to understand the science behind the soup.
It really does. So as you go about your week, consider the food you turn to when your system is overwhelmed. Are you reaching for a culinary sledgehammer that tastes good but exhausts your body? Or do you have a blank canvas in your life?
That's a great question to reflect on.
Think about what your own personal equivalent of that warm, gentle, perfectly engineered bowl might be. What is the ultimate blank canvas comfort food in your own life that provides that exact same feeling of safety and restoration? The next time you feel your energy depleting, you might want to bypass the heavy comfort foods and look for something that genuinely offers a spa day for your biology.